Okay, had a little fun little silent stream for the first few minutes because I forgot to turn the audio back on. So it is, what's today's date? The 12th. It's 11/12/22. So it is November 12th, 2022. Got a new book that launched yesterday. It is called Afterglow Generation Y. Hopefully you guys can see it right there. And most of you have probably already read this book, at least most of it. There's actually new content in here that hasn't been on the channel or on my blog before. So I'll talk about that a little bit. Just a couple of things, but you've actually maybe heard or read most of it already because it's a collection of like the short stories and the mood pieces that I've done on the channel over the last couple of years. So things like Middlebury, things like, the Gen Y tales. A lot of these were really kicked off by a bunch of discussions I had with me, Brian Niemeyer, and JD Cowan on our blogs, writing articles and talking about this on Twitter, including Brian was really the first person to write something specifically like, here's a Gen Y tale. And that inspired me to write a few. And then I ended up writing more stories that had a lot to do with these moods. It just kind of continued on from there. And so I eventually ended up with a whole book of them. And people have asked for the collection. Here it is. You can also check out let me find it here real quick. It is Generation Y, The New Lost Generation. It's a free book edited by JD Cowan, or assembled by JD Cowan, let's say, and has essays by him, Brian Niemeyer, and myself talking about who Generation Y was. I just put out a video on who Generation Y was. Now, I say was, people are like, it sounds like they're dead. Yeah, it's because we were memory hold, right? This term, Generation Y, was what was popular in the 1980s and 90s to talk about people my age, and then it disappeared from usage and was replaced by millennial. But in usage, millennial really referred to a younger generation. It was those kids born in the 90s, and no one really did anything with, talked about the kids from the 80s or anything like that. So if you grew up in the 80s, you were memory hold. You were forgotten. There was the Gen Xers who were adults in 1990, and then the millennials who were adults in 2010, and just this kind of forgotten generation in between there. And so we have to, talk about why that cohort exists as a specific kind of cohort. And the big ones are, you remember life before and after. So you have a childhood, you have the last childhood of the 20th century, the last childhood in the high trust, high value, super wealthy 20th century United States, and you're also the first generation to experience the decline as adults. So we're the first generation to take on lots of debt for student debt that would supposedly be paid off by higher salaries, which never materialized along with the careers. We were the first generation to really experience the internet as adults, but we had a childhood that was really free of the internet, that the internet was not a ubiquitous thing even when we were teenagers. It took effort to get on the internet. Most people did not have high-speed internet access until well into the 2000s, whereas millennials grew up surrounded by the internet. They were on the internet from a young age, and in most cases, unrestricted access to the internet because their parents weren't really up on everything that the internet was doing. And the millennials, kind of like Gen Y and Gen X before them, were underparented, so they were left unsupervised a lot of times. My cat is just going crazy there. Sorry about that. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Would 87 and 90, 89 disqualify kids as being Gen Y? Now that's like the last couple people that were Gen Y. So you still are going to remember what no internet was like, right? By 2000, you may have had dial-up internet, but that's not the same as it is now, where like I'm streaming something, to your phone. You have the internet in your pocket. That's a totally different experience than what we get today in 2022, and what millennials really had being teenagers. If you're a teenager in 2010, that's a wildly different experience than being a teenager in 1995, right? Wildly different experience. So that's why we think that grouping of the 1980s, like the late 70s to late 80s, is really more appropriate a more appropriate and coherent grouping, a coherent cohort, versus saying everyone from 80s to 2000s is a generation. There's so many different experiences. If you were 7 during 9/11, it's like being 7 in 1941. You're not really part of the greatest generation if you were 5 when Pearl Harbor happened, right? So we got to keep these things in mind, that the experiences are going to vary wildly depending on how old you were. And everybody's being born all the time. It's not like every 20 years new people are born. It's everybody's being born all the time. Everybody's dying all the time. So the tales are always going to have more in common. You know, if you were born in 1980, you're going to have a lot more in common with Gen X than someone born in 1990. But the person born in 1990 is going to have a lot more in common with Gen X than somebody born in 2000, right? The rapidity of social change increases over time. Things get more rapid as we go along. So the everyday life in 1990 was wildly different from 2000, which was wildly different from 2010. So in 1990, virtually no one had the internet. We didn't even really know what that was. The closest thing we had was dialing into servers using like analog modems. Actually, in 1990, you had digital modems by that time. Analog modems were like the 70s and 80s, but you know, you dialed in with these like 1440 baud modems, which were really super slow, and you weren't necessarily going on the internet from an ISP. By 1995, you have a nascent internet, and by 2000, you have the internet. You have people downloading songs off Napster. You have people with high-speed internet. By 2010, you have social media. You have Facebook. Facebook is a wildly different experience than going online and getting songs off Napster. So in 2000, the internet entirely existed to like steal things, to steal digital products. And by 2010, it was still used for that, but it was mostly about social media. Wildly different experiences. Let's take a look at the chat real quick. And then we'll see if anybody wants to hop into the Discord server and chat live. So if you want to hop onto the Discord server and chat, I'll link that in a minute. So yeah, new one. Also, before I forget, Eyes in the Walls is free today. Let me link these. I need to link this stuff. So Eyes in the Walls is free today. So grab that. This is another Gen Y book. It takes place in 1991. I didn't say it specifically, but people figured it out because the guy has a Game Boy, and he's playing NES, but he doesn't have a Super Nintendo yet. So like it's 1990, 1991 is when this is taking place. This is a Gen Y book. And this explains a lot of what it was like to be a kid as Gen Y, which is that you were very underparented. You were left on your own or you were in daycare. So in a lot of cases, you were just kind of set free after school, and there were no adults around to supervise you. There was no one around to tell you what to do. I remember getting out of elementary school sometimes, and there would be, there would be no one around, no adults. All the adults would be at work. There'd be no one on the streets. It'd be like this bizarre, crazy, empty place where no one lived. It was very, very, very strange. So anyway, Eyes in the Walls really captures that, and it's a horror book. It's not one of these mood pieces. It's about the story of fighting a monster. So people really like this one. It's one of my books that apparently has Goodreads. There's like a Goodreads rating on it of 4.0. I don't know if that's good or not, because I don't interact with Goodreads. It's just a place for people to review bomb each other. It's a really toxic place. I don't know why Amazon bought it, to be honest. But anyway, that's that. Sound Engraver, just saw your Gen Y video. Explains so much of what we see in pop culture, among other societal things. Yeah. New book looks great. Thank you, Film Girl. I appreciate it. Really enjoyed these stories over the years. Please drop a review. Yeah. On Goodreads, I guess. If you want to do Goodreads. Or Amazon is better because the people can read the reviews right there. So if you like it. Middlebury is honestly one of your best writings. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's actually one of the favorite stories I wrote. There's a sequel to Middlebury, a like fantasy horror sequel, actually, that is on Kindle Vela. Let's see if I can find it. Though it's not, I don't make that obvious, but it's the characters from Middlebury. It's called Lawless Darkness. I'll link it. if anybody wants to read a Kindle Vela story. I haven't finished putting it out on Vela, but you can read some of it if you want to. I'll put it out as a complete book a little bit later, probably in 2023. With the first 6 to 7 years, child development between these decades influenced generation homogeny. I think so. I figured the mid-kid are the peak with their gen. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's probably accurate. So kids born in like 1984, 85 are very Gen Y. Kids born in 78 have a lot, it's transitional. You're still pretty Gen X. You're going to have a lot of the Gen X attitudes. Gen X experienced institutions really before they failed, and Gen Y experienced them predominantly as they were failing to failed, but nobody realized it yet, we were heavily propagandized in the 90s towards feminist thought in public school, but people weren't aware of that at the time. I can only see it as an adult, like, oh, all these things these boomer teachers were telling us, this was all feminist propaganda. This was all socialist propaganda kind of piped into we had to write essays basically on feminism in the 1990s. And today there's a lot of hoop and haw about that kind of thing, but it just wasn't on people's radar. Parents were not monitoring what their child was doing in school. They assumed the child was being taught the same things in school that they were being taught. They assumed the kid was learning math and learning English and reading the classics, not being told to write essays about gender discrimination and how boys were bad and things like that. And they certainly weren't expecting their teachers to come in and talk to the students about how bad boys were and how good girls were. But that was like everything in the 90s. That was just the common everyday thing. And because we didn't have anything to compare it to, we just thought that was normal. So many of us grew up with a warped understanding of gender norms and things like that. It's much worse with younger generations, but it was there in the 90s. The institutions were failing. They were already failed in some cases, but people just weren't aware of it yet. They didn't know what was going on yet. The parents weren't monitoring anything that was going on with their kids. They were kind of oblivious. They let their kids watch as much TV, get on the internet as much as they wanted. Millennials, that's been like really tragic for millennials to have unrestricted internet access. Sorry, allergies. Because a lot of them ended up with, especially young men, pornography addiction. Since they had unrestricted internet access, they, as young people, got to use tons of pornography and have dysfunction as adults as a result of it. It's a real problem. Luckily, us older folks, we didn't have that as teenagers. We didn't have, the ability to watch like HD porn nonstop for free. It was actually difficult to acquire pornography in the 1990s, guys. It was somebody had a magazine in their backpack, and that was like a big deal. Sega Saturn was my first internet. Sega Saturn was wild. It was such a cool console. Really unfortunate that it didn't succeed. Same thing with the Dreamcast. Yeah, it really depends where you grew up. I grew up in like conservative Central California for the most part. And you remember like people like California, liberal, like California when I was in high school banned gay marriage. That's how liberal California was. California banned affirmative action in gay marriage. Banned it by voter referendum, but put it in constitutional amendments. And there's a whole bunch of other legal, tomfoolery that's happened since then. But California used to be a very conservative state. People don't realize it because they didn't live here. But it's completely imploded. And it's imploded and changed. People focus on the Mexican immigration demographic. A lot of them are conservative. In the Central Valley, most Hispanics you meet are on the conservative range of things, especially these days. They've lived here for 20 years. They tend to have more conservative values about everything. Really, it's migration within the United States is that you have liberal people who moved into California from other parts of the United States and liberalized it. So it's partly immigration, but it's also a lot of just people who are Americans moving into California who have liberal attitudes, changing it. And of course, the power brokers tend to all be liberal. So whatever the power base is, it doesn't matter what the people think. If the oligarchs moving into California are liberal, then it's just going to have liberal policies because they're the ones who control the policies. 93 kid here. I loathe my generation. I don't hate millennials. Millennials have a different struggle. Their struggle is everything's year zero. So Gen Y is like hyper nostalgic for the past, but millennials are rather than being hyper nostalgic for the past, they're over focused on the moment. Right? They don't really have a clear idea of the past being good or better than it is now. They don't really remember what high trust society was like. They don't remember what it was like to get on a plane 15 minutes after arriving at the airport without having to have every part of your body searched with a finger or a scanner that looks at your freaking genitals. Right? They don't remember this. Like, this is an abstract idea. It's like horse and buggy level stuff. What do you mean people used to have carriage houses and work on their carriages? What are you talking about? So that's the struggle of millennials is different, and the struggle of Zoomers, the generation after that, is even more profound in a lot of ways. Depression is, I make a point about millennials being this first generation to be super doped up, but like Gen Z has major psychological trauma and issues caused by being so heavily propagandized by control of the internet, as well as a completely fallen public education system. Yeah, I don't even remember 9/11. That's a difference. That's a big difference. I don't remember 9/11. I wasn't 18. I was 18 when 9/11 happened. I hadn't enlisted. A lot of my friends had enlisted prior to that. Now I hadn't enlisted because I'm actually ineligible to join the military due to not having an eardrum in my right ear. So I found that out when I was 18. They're like, you can't join the army. So I guess I'll go to college. But I had a bunch of friends who signed up at 18, and 3 months later 9/11 happened. You're going to have a radically different experience of life if that was your experience versus somebody who had 10 years of war to contemplate whether they wanted to join the army or not. Everybody in 2000 to 2004, the propaganda of the war was in full swing. You weren't going to join up with full knowledge of, or any kind of critical knowledge of what the war on terror really was, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, Dad worked on computers when you had to situate those data cards and boxes in the right order. Yes, Fiona Wolf. My dad had when he took computers in college, they were punch cards, which is wild to think about. What was your opinions on Sinnerman from Cyberpunk? I'll get to that in a second. I'm actually going to unmute the... I think I'm going to unmute the chat. I think Jacob Kalt is in here, so I'll get him in here right now. Let me unmute or undeafen me, and then he can talk if he wants to. Okay. And then we might have a couple other people swinging by. So what's your opinion on Sinnerman from Cyberpunk? This is easily my least favorite mission in Cyberpunk 2077. So I will have a full review of Cyberpunk 2077. If you want a mini review, I think it's a pretty good game. However, I don't think every part of the game is good, and I don't like Night City. Night City is not a place I like to adventure in or exist in. Kind of like playing Fallout. Fallout games are fun, but I really, when I'm done with them, I'm quite done with them because there's no fantasy aspect to the Fallout universe I enjoy. And it's really the same thing with Cyberpunk, is that it's a highly rendered universe of things I hate. Not things I hate, but like I lived in Las Vegas, I lived in LA. This is a caricature of those two places combined with like the desert right outside the city. This is how Las Vegas was. When you drove out of Las Vegas, it ended and then there was desert. There was nothing else. And it's like that in Cyberpunk. So I'm going to finish it up today. I meant to finish it up last night, but that last mission's really long. And I'll finish it up today and get a review at some point because I think I'm going to play the new WoW expansion with a friend of mine. At least for a couple weeks till I get bored. Which is the best way to play MMOs these days, in my opinion. What was I going to say? So Sinnerman, yes. I really hated this because of the lack of options that you have as a player, the lack of agency you have as a player. As a player, your only agency is to walk away or to participate in the sacrilege. And I didn't like that. And I thought V is somebody who would actually want to take action to stop this bad thing from happening. Not just me, but the character V would not. He could walk away because he's a merc, but he would probably get mad and stop it. So there was no option for me to just kill everyone, right? There's a part where they're nailing this guy on a cross for this like brain dance thing. It's hard to explain. Just you could play the game. This is so sacrilegious and so disgusting and so offensive, right? That how can I stop this? There's no dialogue option to stop what's happening. There's no dialogue option to convince the person, you need to not do this and just go back to jail and continue your process of repentance because this is evil. This is an absolutely wicked thing to do. You aren't doing anything good. You are making money for a corporation and you are blaspheming. So there's no option to do that. If there was an option to straight up kill the corpo girl with the sideways shaved haircut, I would have just killed her. I would have just killed her and for her blasphemy and ended it and just had a moment where V is going to be a holy crusader and just kill these heretics. We're gonna beat the crap out of the heretics and stop this from happening. There's no option to stop that. So because there's no option to stop the blasphemy and the sacrilege, it really was annoying to me. It was like completely no agency. And the guy who was going to kill the person who murdered his wife, he just gets killed and you just like leave him on the road. It's one of the worst quests I've ever played in the game. The most frustrating quest, terribly written. I just hated it. Hated it. So, anyway. 95, I was doing my military obligation. Up at 5 a.m., make that bed, get showered, get up front and center, get your butt rolling. Where else? Yep. Do you think generational differences will eventually lead to something like the Chinese zodiac calendar, where personality traits get attributed to someone born in a certain time frame? Well, we're doing that now to a certain extent, aren't we? But I don't know. I don't think so. In that case, it's more like we're doing this after the fact. This is all after the fact kind of stuff. I didn't pay attention to the news back then. The news is very addictive. I recommend nobody watch the news. I've done a bunch of stuff on this. I'll have another video probably today. You only have so much time in the day. If you're spending your time in the day watching news or paying attention to politics, really politics is the focus, you're wasting your time. You could do almost anything better, especially considering your vote doesn't matter and doesn't count. Like, why would you worry about politics? Just pray. Just open up your Bible and read for 10 minutes instead of watching the news, or pray. If you feel like, I want to read this article on politics on Twitter, just stop, close it, say, every time I feel that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to pray. And even if you don't believe in prayer, if you're like, I don't believe in God and I don't believe in any of this, the optionality of praying is much better than the optionality of being political, of paying attention to politics. Because God might answer your prayers. Even if you're completely atheist, there might be a God and he might answer your prayers. However, your vote objectively will do nothing. So better to spend your time on anything else. You'd be better off staring at the wall than worrying about politics. One of Christ's most frequent commandments, I think it is the most frequent commandment that Christ gives in all the Gospels, is not to worry. That worrying will not add a single day to your life. Who by worrying can add a single day to his life? You're not getting any information from the TV or from the news or any of that stuff that will help you make a good political decision. So stop watching it. All right? Any decision I can think of. Have you ever watched the news and had it inform you in a way that would help you make a good decision? My guess is probably not. Rumble has a great question. Definitely parents assumed education would give them the basics, so they focus on monetary responsibilities. I must have missed this. Let me find it. Sorry. Yes. Okay, yeah. Parents assumed education would give them the basics so they could focus on monetary responsibilities. Yeah. Yeah. They bombarded us with everyone's the same crap in the 1980s. This stuff goes way back. But parents weren't paying attention. Even my mom, who was a boomer teacher, wasn't fully paying attention to what was being taught in classes. You were just kind of existing in this milieu, not really thinking critically about, wait a minute, Like having kids write essays about like feminist movements or suffragettes or something like that. This is a political propaganda technique. No one really stopped and thought about that at all. Gen Y's mess ups weren't stored on the internet like nowadays. Thank you, God, for making it so that all of my bad mistakes are not public knowledge and recorded forever on the internet. Thank you that all of my improprieties happened in a time when not everything was saved as a matter of public record for all eternity, before social media. That is a huge blessing, unbelievable blessing, that we could do all the bad things, make all the bad mistakes, say all the stupid things, and no one was around to record every word we said. What a blessing compared to 2022. And if you're young, consider this. Anytime you're partying or having fun, there should be like a no phone policy. Everybody should have to drop their phone in a bucket. No recordings, no pictures, no record of what you did. That's the way that you're actually going to be able to loose your tongue enough to have intimacy with other people. This is a real problem today. So this gets me on another tangent. And Jacob, you can talk whenever you want to, by the way. I have another guy in chat who wanted to stop by from the Pulp Rev community. Anyway.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna pop in like this. Can you see me?
I can't see you, but I'm just doing audio chat.
Oh,
I can see you. I can see you. Watch this. Let me see if I can grab you. Oh no, I can't. Can I pop you out? Hold on. I'll figure this out in a second. Let me continue this rant. Wait. I have this. There it is. Okay. There's a tiny picture of you while I continue this rant. So, yeah, you need to have like a no phone policy of. You need to have like a no phone policy of whatever you are. Where's my camera? My camera disappeared here. I think anyway. I'll figure it out in a second. Yeah, so you need to have a no phone policy. We have a problem in 2022 in that because everything is so on record, everybody's pointing a camera at you all the time, it's very difficult to have any kind of real intimacy with other people. Real intimacy means being able to communicate your feelings to another person authentically and hearing and receiving their feelings authentically as well. So who can you communicate your innermost thoughts to? Can you talk to somebody and tell them what you think about something that's controversial? Chances are you don't want to, because the optionality is very bad. You're like, this person could talk about it on social media, they could spread it around, they could record it. If I send it in a chat, they could take a screenshot and post it. Like, nothing is private anymore. When you're living in the pupil of 1,000 eyes, you can't have any intimacy with other people because there's no barrier, there's no privacy. Intimacy is being able to know things other people don't. In a sense. So we lose that. We lose that with the ubiquitousness of social media. And I think this is a big problem now, because it used to be we just were kind of free with our thoughts on social media and people dealt with it because we were operating in the mode from the 1990s. Now it's more like everybody's looking for an opportunity to get you fired, you know. What are you going to say that's going to get you fired? Is it going to be something really bad? What is he going to say? So anyway, there's that. My thoughts. You have any thoughts, Jacob? I'm going to get you on screen here. Just give me a minute here.
I was about to say, this is going to be kind of an interesting conversation, because for those who have not... Well, first off, my name's Jake Kelta. I'm a writer. I've been working on a project out of Substack called 365 Infantry. I'm kind of relatively new to the whole pulp sphere, but, you know, kind of got a nice... Not windfall monetarily speaking, but kind of got swept up in the whole Iron Age thing. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I think this is actually going to be a very interesting conversation, because you are talking to a Zoomer. I'm 21 years old.
All right, here's a blurry picture of you until I get it like really figured out here.
I can live with that. You're not missing anything, folks. Scout's honor.
All right. So, so Zoomers are really just this next generation. They have their own struggles. Every generation has their own struggles. We make fun of millennials because they're like the soy face generation. Like, oh, I'm so into the product. Gen Y is their own thing, which is like, I want to buy the toys from when I was a kid. And then the millennials are like, oh yeah, D&D is actually the perfect example. So, Gen X guys are like, let's play 1.0 D&D. Gen Y guys are like, oh, I just remember like 3.0. And then the millennials are like, no, we want the current thing, and we need to fix it. We need to get rid of all the bad stuff so we can all play D&D and have a great storytelling time, and we're all gonna role play and have collective story. And like the Gen Y, Gen X are like, well, that's not what this was. This was like a nerd sitting around playing a game and trying to win at the game.
Right.
You know, radically different approaches. I was a high school teacher, was like one of my more recent jobs, I guess. So all of my students at that time, this was like in 2016, 17. When did I stop working there? 2018 maybe. They were all Zoomers, you know.
Out there.
Yeah. These were all Zoomers. They had a wildly different attitude about everything. They thought social media. They were like, none of them used Facebook. They thought social media. They all taped over their cameras on everything. They were like hyper paranoid. You know, everyone was. It was just a really different attitude.
I mean, I can kind of give you a little ground eye view of that, because I do remember the taping over the webcam phenomena, especially. I mean, for Christ's sakes, I've got a laptop right now. I got a laptop right now that actually does have a slide. You can, you know, for a demonstration, do that automatically. You don't need to put the sticky note over it anymore.
Yeah, I have like a little boop
right
on the camera.
And it's also it's kind of weird too, because it's almost this combination of paranoia and apathy that I've kind of noticed, because there's a lot of, at least what I'm seeing in, like, from afar, being in college, I'm seeing just a lot of people are just kind of overstressed and just totally directionless. You know, because it's like all the hedonism stuff just isn't special anymore. You know, you have decades to get away with it, essentially. And so it's all just so commonplace. It's like, you can go get laid. Okay, what's new? You can go smoke pot. Okay, what's new?
Yeah, so this was so if you take a trip back to like the 90s, this is something kind of funny. I was talking about Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is the game itself. It's like it's disconnected from the tabletop game that inspired it, which was called Cyberpunk 2020. You know, a role-playing game of the dark future. And part of that, like, role-playing game of the dark future, I need to turn up Jacob, he's a little too quiet. Part of the role-playing game of the dark future was like, it was dark and bad and scary. The Cyberpunk 2077, it's almost celebrating it, right? Like, it's a joke. Every single ad has like a butt on it, and it's like about sex, or like there's, you know, an advertisement for methamphetamine, like go get your methamphetamine and all that kind of stuff. And it's a caricature, but we're really not that far from it. Like we get ads for all kinds of drugs for people to take to make them feel better all the time. You know, it's like a celebration of hedonism. You can go have sex with a prostitute. It's like, woo. In the 90s, that stuff was interesting to kids. That's why they liked, say, Grand Theft Auto in the 2000s. Grand Theft Auto 3, people had this big freak out over that because kids were playing this Grand Theft Auto game where you could shoot people and hire prostitutes, and it's like, you know, that kind of celebration of it. Well, that stuff's kind of old hat now. You know, yeah, you can get marijuana, you can get whatever drugs. There's no meaning.
It really, right? It really is. And I mean, I'm also not saying I'm like totally, you know, innocent here, especially because what I do with 365 is very much cut from the mold of Heavy Metal Magazine. So I'm totally fine writing in, you know, provocative, you know, moments here and there. And I've got one of my leads who is essentially this hippie meet like Charles Bronson, Pam.
Yeah, hold on a second. I see what the problem is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Discord's not coming through the desktop audio for some reason. So, let me add another.
My favorite thing in the whole wide world.
Yeah, let me route you in a different way here. That's why he's quiet. He's quiet because you're only hearing him on my mic. Yeah, let me figure this out real quick. I'm not sure what the problem is here. All right, talk again.
Hello, hello. Can you hear
Yeah.
me for real this time?
Yeah, it's still not doing it. All right.
Oh,
Okay.
shit.
So yeah, this is not gonna work out today with just this regular setup for some reason. I'm not sure
I can also
why.
kill video. I just figured I'd pop on just because.
Yeah, I mean I can hear you, but I'm not sure what Discord's doing that it's not showing up here. Let me try a different audio source real quick.
All right.
Add another audio source.
I try and help with the dead air. It's just that you're probably
Yeah.
no.
No, it's not working today. I'm not sure what's going on or how Discord did that. Actually, maybe I can disable streamer mode. Talk again?
Hello, hello.
No, it's not working. All right. Yeah, that's not going to work today, unfortunately.
Oof.
Yeah, Mike Pondsmith is an awesome dude. He really is a cool guy. So, I mean, I can just turn you up a little bit for now. For whatever reason, it's not showing up at all. I don't know what the deal is there. Something that Discord did to like not show up in the standard system audio for some reason. No idea.
All right, I'll
So
leave
something
turn
else.
on. I'm not sure if that'll help much, but just so that way,
Yeah.
streamline things a little.
Okay.
All right, there I am.
Well, this works. All right. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work this time. So I'll bid you adieu, and I'll have you on another day when I can get
All
this
right,
actually set
fine
up
with me.
correctly.
Have a good one.
All right. Take it easy.
You too. Peace.
Yeah, the problem with it was the problem with the audio, guys. I'm sorry for that. I wanted to talk to more people, but problem with the audio was really that we had. If you notice me looking around, it's because I put my camera. I have my camera on a thing like in front of my monitor. It's really weird. So I can have it above where I'm looking up, or like here where I'm looking down. But I really want it like on my face, so I'm looking at the camera. Anyway. Yeah, I couldn't get the Discord audio to come through the regular system audio. I've never had that problem before. I don't have time to troubleshoot that. So we're just gonna go on with that. Maybe we'll play a game in a little bit and just chit chat with some other stuff. Let's back up here. Boom. There's the chat. There's so much going on today. We used to always target Mexicans to buy us porn because they were way down. Yeah, you always had to have someone like get a physical copy of a magazine. That's what you had to do in like the 80s and 90s. You couldn't just like click on a website and 3 seconds later you had it. Not only that, but like websites, porn websites were really worried about. They were really worried about getting in trouble for letting kids see pornography. So in order to view them, you had to go through some kind of age verification, like have them charge $1 on your credit card or something so that they knew that you were an adult in order to view the contents of the website. This was the case in like the late 90s. But what happened was, I hate to talk about this like I'm some kind of expert, but it's something I'm concerned about because I think pornography is really harmful. It's harmful to everyone. I can't think of a single person who benefits from pornography. You may think that the woman is benefiting monetarily if she has like a huge OnlyFans thing, but how's that going to work out for her years later? Is she going to regret what she did, or was she taking a different path? But certainly the people who consume pornography are harmed by it. Anyway, yeah, you had these tube sites that popped up, like these free pornography sites that popped up, and they killed all the paid sites. And it turns out that this was a deliberate action done by a couple of people whose names are very difficult to find, and I don't have them right in front of me right now, but we did some investigation and figured out that all of the porn websites are owned basically by one shadowy dude who operates through this I think it's called MindGeek or something, that owns like all the porn companies, like, what's the big one? PornTube? What? I don't remember. Pornhub. right? He owns those and a bunch of others. And so what they did initially is that they allowed users to upload videos. And what the suspicion is that they basically made a bunch of fake users and they skimmed the internet for other people's content, ripped it off and put it on that website so that people would stop visiting the paid sites and they would only go to Pornhub. And so all of the traffic ended up in those couple of free sites where people could get what you would have to pay for on some other company's website for free. And boom, they had as much free stuff as they wanted. And once they killed off all the competition, then they remonetized from that position. So that's the way it works. So either users were uploading it or really probably fake users. I'm not going to accuse anyone of anything, but this is definitely the black hat strategy, is you have a bunch of users that are anonymous that maybe you control who skim the internet, rip the stuff off, put it up on your website illegally, and it's so much trouble to get it taken down. By the time it gets taken down with a DMCA complaint or something, people have already seen it. People get acclimated to just coming onto your website and seeing fresh new pornography they don't have to pay for every single day. It completely changes the industry and makes it so that like it's a ubiquitous free thing. No kind of age verification required anymore. You get kids in on it. That's probably intentional, right? You do want as few barriers to somebody viewing pornography as possible. Therefore, you're not really going to care if the kids view it. And if the kids view it, even better, because they get addicted to your product early on. That's what happened with this. And this is so wildly different from the way pornography was in the 80s and 90s. Even if you're totally against porn, to acquire porn in the 80s or 90s was difficult. You had to like order it with like a mail catalog, go into like a CD store somewhere, or if it was on pay-per-view or one of those weird channels, you had to call and pay money for it. It was a lot harder to see a breast as a child than it is now. Way harder to see sexual content back when I was a kid, and that's to our benefit. That makes it so we're going to be healthier than the next generations. I see a lot of the psychological distress and sexual dysfunction of the Zoomers and the millennials is probably due to way too much pornography use. You can say it's harmful in a small dose, but it's certainly going to be harmful in huge doses where you're consuming it daily, as multiple times a day, as a habit. It's just awful. David says he hates porn. It's really bad for us. It's it's a societal virus. It's really making our young people sick. And at a certain point, you get kind of a burnout from that, right? Like pornography no longer is interesting because you've seen it all. And if pornography is no longer interesting, is the actual sexual act interesting to you anymore? What's your sex drive like? Can you actually perform with real people? Lots of millennials have profound sexual dysfunction due to pornography addiction. You can read up some articles on this, do a little research if you like, but this is what I found. I don't keep like extensive, here's the articles to read for this kind of stuff, but you train your mind to have a sexual response that's entirely based on the novelty of these little things that you're seeing on the internet. So when you get with a real person, it feels different, it sounds different, it smells different, right? Everything's different about it. So that it becomes difficult to perform because you're used to acting in a certain way in response to very specific kinds of sexual stimulus. Real sex is very different from what it is in the porno. I don't see much talk on this, but I suspect there's been a rise in cuckoldry because of porn consumption. I think so too. It's an inception thing. The idea that this reflects what people's previous desires were is insane. I've never met anybody who was into that, yet somehow you create a bunch of porno that does that, and then people develop a fetish. Wild to think about. I think there's lots of people who transition, who become trans and then regret it because they're sexualizing what do they call it? Like autogynephilia. They're sexualizing the idea of themselves as a woman in sex, and then they come to realize that that's a paraphilia, and really the transitioning did not give them what they wanted or fix any of their problems. Lots of people are that's the case. That's why suicide rates are so high. But there's a massive suppression of anybody that wants to go counter to that narrative and say, hey, you shouldn't do this. Some people who overconsume porn can't see themselves doing the act, so they need to watch others. Yeah, there you go. My friends found a porn mag in the woods near my house in the 90s. It was like finding the holy grail for us. Yes, this is how it was. It's like, oh man, Bob's older brother, Billy's older brother got a club international. It's like, and then everybody you take it out of the backpack at school, give it to the other person, and then it would go around the circle, and you'd be like, wow, like the stuff inside of it was so gross and crazy. But you never got to see that stuff. It was so hard to get it. Now, the things that we thought were exciting in 1995 are probably just completely banal today, and just you could probably see 10 times worse on Twitter. Michigan's so sad we just legalized baby ending because of popular vote. Well, that's the problem with popular anything. You gotta have rulers who rule for the good, not for the bad. If everybody wants to get drunk, that doesn't mean they should get drunk. If everybody wants to kill themselves, that doesn't mean they should kill themselves. The biggest difference I noticed between me as a late X and the Ys I know is that I have a really clear memory of when everything worked. It's much more fuzzy for the Ys. It's more fuzzy for the Ys because it's a transition. But I remember when things worked for the most part, and I really remember when they stopped working. And so that's what you have with Gen X for sure, is that you have a memory of functional institutions. Your parents were probably married, right? Gen Y, a lot of them have no memory of what a marriage is supposed to look like. My wife, her parents divorced when she was tiny. Most of my friends I knew that had divorced parents, their parents divorced when they were little kids. But their older siblings, the ones who were like born in the 70s, they spent most of their life with their parents married. So they have a clear memory of what a marriage is supposed to look like, at least a nominal degree. Obviously not a functional marriage, or it wouldn't have ended. But a lot of Ys just they grew up in broken homes. How are you gonna know what your marriage is supposed to be if you didn't have one modeled for you? It's a real problem. If you didn't have a healthy sexual relationship modeled for you, not obviously you watching your parents do it, but I mean a healthy relationship of healthy marriage, let's say, a healthy relationship between a man and a woman, then it's going to be very difficult for you to have that. You don't have a base understanding of what that's supposed to look like. You have to somehow learn it through trial and error, and that is not preferable. Forget immigrants from Mexico. I'm more worried about the California immigrants. I'm originally from Texas, by the way, so I'm coming back home. But it depends who's immigrating where and why, right? So, like I said, a lot of the people moving out of California are not what people who aren't from California think of as Californian. If you spent time in Central California, you'd have a radically different idea of what California is like than if you visit LA and see the freaks on the street who really control the feeling of the cities now. I really despise California cities now. San Francisco used to be a great place to hang out. I used to love hanging out in San Francisco. I used to love spending time there. And I used to love LA. I lived in LA. I had a great time in LA. But I don't like going there now. It's filthy, it's gross, it's full of degenerate activity, and people are crazy there. The little time I spent interacting with people in Hollywood, I think these people are severely mentally traumatized by something. And being around other people who are traumatized doesn't heal you, right? You got to be healed through normalcy in a sense. Like most of these people who are hurt, they need to move out to rural Ohio and just live in a small town and get to know real people who will care about them as a human being. Yeah, they're going to think you're weird, but they'll probably still help you because they recognize that you're a human. And then through that, you'll actually regain a lot of your humanity and your understanding of how people are and how people are supposed to think and to accept yourself. I think cities are the epicenter of mental illness. I think they make us crazy. I don't think we're meant to live in close quarters like that, and I don't think we're meant to stick that many people with traumas into one little and expect them to be okay. But yeah, I would say the difference between X and Y is a difference of degree. Like X's, Y's are like X's to a lesser degree, and the difference between millennial and Y is just a difference in kind. It's a completely different mindset. I started growing up in conservative part of Western New York, then moved to less conservative part of Western New York about 12 years old. The difference was very noticeable, even as a preteen. Yeah, you can see this difference in rural New York versus like city New York. It's there too. Vermont versus, Vermont is not far, not Vermont, New Hampshire is not far from New York, but it's a wildly different place to be. I grew up in San Diego. My dad did too. When he described as San Diego in the 50s, 60s, it sounds like Idaho, honestly. You can hunt in the Mission Valley, military engineers. Yeah. Oh, San Diego. San Diego is actually still really cool. It's actually the coolest city in California is probably San Diego. San Diego still has a great atmosphere to it, and people are not insane there. I think the ocean helps. It's just beautiful climate. What a wonderful place to be. It's nothing like LA. LA is like this dirty, scummy place, and then like San Diego is beautiful. Pretty accurate. I'm not sure who, but the millennials were screwed before they were even born and their life barely began. Yeah. When everything worked also includes high trust society, almost perfunctory security at airports. You pumped gas before you pay for it. Yes! You used to be able to pump gas and then go pay for it. People are like, what? Who would trust you to do that? It's like you lived in a society. You would pay for things. You could, as a shopkeeper, you're not going to believe this. You could walk out of your shop and do something and leave a customer in there looking for things and know that nothing would be stolen. Not only that, but the customer might just leave cash on the counter for what he wanted if he was in a hurry. He'd be like, oh, I don't have time for this. Here's $5. I got the donuts. I'm heading out. That was normal. You could just do that. The whole idea of people not locking their doors, like people didn't lock their doors at night. No one was coming in. I joined the Marine Corps on September 11th. Wild. I had a job interview. Interviewer asked me who my hero was. I said Ted Kaczynski. They never called back. What's up, Mega Buster Shepherd? What's the last execution for homosexuality in the UK? It was John Smith. He tried to rent a room out in the country. The innkeeper up and sideways down ratted him out. The state of affairs. That's weird. I'll have to read up on that. Goodreads is useful to keep track of the books you read. I don't keep track of them. Yeah, I don't keep track of the books I read. Weird, right? I just read the books and then read other books, and I just enjoy reading. So people are like, how many books did you read this year? I don't know. I have to stop and think. I'm like, I don't even know how many books I read. 20? I don't know. 30? It's like I have to stop and, I read a lot of different things. How many articles did I read? A lot of those too. I read so much every day. A lot of it is not necessarily books, right? Or you listen to an audiobook, or you read the Bible. You read a lot. We're reading constantly on the internet. Really are. Night City is the antagonist of Cyberpunk. Yeah. Nathan Stein it's like Night City is like the villain. Yeah, Night City is really the antagonist. You're fighting against the city. You're fighting against the system. That's the real antagonist of Cyberpunk. But the thing is, the game itself doesn't really treat it as an antagonist. It almost celebrates how it is. Maybe because I'm Danish, but despite a 93 kid, I still have a scant memory of my early childhood being pre-digital. Only when I got closer to being a teenager, the internet had truly taken hold. Yeah, that's true. So like the 90s are not going to have the ubiquitous internet. It's really when you're like 15 and everybody's on Facebook. Really, millennials are pre-smartphone in their youth. Zoomers are post-smartphone, where it's like you walk through life like this, like with you might as well put it in your eyes, like in Cyberpunk, and just have like your scanning eyes, and you're like you're doom scrolling on the side or something, because people are so into their phones. I'm into my phone too. You're not alone. I remember using rotary phones. Yeah, I remember dial-up. I remember analog modems. They had these speakers, and you put the Bell telephone. Everybody had a Bell telephone because it was a standard telephone system. Weird. The phone company gave you your phone. You didn't buy a phone. They gave you this beige phone thing, and you just plugged it in. And you could get more phones like starting in the 80s, but it used to be you had to get the phone from the phone company. So the phone company gave you a phone, and we still had a Bell telephone in my house. And you put the headset, the Bell headset, on these two cups, and it would beep and boop, and then you would dial into a server, and it would do all the data by doing all these digital sounds through speakers into the microphone of the of the phone back, and then the speaker of the phone would put the data back in, and then that was how a modem worked on an old computer. Crazy. You can look it up. Analog modems. They started in like the 60s. This was a way to transmit data over the phone lines. But they were still being used in the 80s until you started getting digital. You started getting digital modems that could do like, your analog modem was doing like 1400 baud, and then your digital modem was doing like 10,000 baud. Way faster. Lack of player choice should be the title of the game. Yeah, Cyberpunk. So here's the thing. Cyberpunk is not special in that regard. A lot of people used to think of BioWare games as these amazing choice games, and I pointed out, I'm like, Mass Effect is entirely an illusion of choice game, and BioWare's good at it. They give you a bunch of choices that you think are going to matter, but they're just isolated from everything else in the game, so they don't actually matter. Are you going to save the Arachnite Queen? Or are you going to kill the Arachnite Queen? It actually doesn't matter. It makes no impact whatsoever. It's just your personal decision that maybe that affects you and you care about the Arachnite Queen, and that's why it's effective. And then, like, the endings just kind of came down to how many resources I gathered. It's like, that's stupid. Yeah. Well, Cyberpunk does the same thing. You have an origin story, it doesn't matter. It gives you some extra dialogue options as you go, but none of those dialogue options change anything. And then you have a set of different endings you can choose from after the point of no return. You can, you can decide to attack Arasaka like on your own. If you wait 5 minutes with Johnny, he'll suggest that you attack Arasaka on your own. You can do it with Rogue, you can do it with Panam, or you can just go with the Arasaka plan, right? Or you can kill yourself. There's an option to just kill yourself, right? Which is just ends the game at that point. Kind of silly. But yeah, none of the decisions you make prior to that have any effect on what you're doing. And so that's why I really hated Sinnerman. There was just zero agency at all. There was no player choice. I couldn't stop the bad thing at all. Even though you'd think it's like, don't I have the option? Like in Morrowind, I could have just killed the NPC and be like, no, I'm not doing this. Boom, you guys are dead for blasphemy. All of you are getting killed as heretics, and I'm going to walk out of here as a Holy Crusader. I would have done that. But I couldn't do that in the game. I couldn't even pull my gun out during the story sequence. I couldn't pull my gun out and end it. I'm like, I want this to end. I want to kill everyone involved. Can't I do that? This is the big thing about Elder Scrolls. You can do that in Elder Scrolls, especially in Morrowind. If you don't like it, boom, you can kill that NPC, and that's the end of that. I remember electronic typewriters. Yeah, my mom had one. Public phones were everywhere, yes, and they actually worked and weren't instantly vandalized. You could make calls from random spots at the quarter. Very different experience. Or the little blue box that Steve Wozniak used to fund the initial Apple computer. Would hack the Bell telephone system so you can make free calls. He used to prank call China and stuff. I loved early electronic typewriters and an LCD that typed line by line to let me avoid typos and messing with whiteout. Yeah, those were cool. The phone book was another remarkable institution. You could contact nearly anyone if you simply knew their name, and you could find out what businesses physically existed in your area. And they might have an address. You could send them a letter if you wanted to. You had your name and address for everyone in town. Would you do that now? It's like, no, someone will come by and kill me because I said something naughty on Twitter. You know. Yeah, I hated that Cyberpunk quest. Okay. Let's keep going. We have a duty to vote against baby ending. Your vote doesn't really do anything, but if you think it's going to do something locally, yeah. But on the national level especially, your vote's probably not going to count. You know, California voted against gay marriage, and then they just threw out the constitutional amendment and declared it unconstitutional. The power brokers called the court threw it out, and the state government, which was controlled by Democrats and Arnold Schwarzenegger, refused to support the will of the people. So the will of the people, your vote didn't matter at all for that. If people back then could have banned abortion, they would have, and they probably would have thrown that out too. So does your vote matter even in that? It wasn't a vote that got rid of Roe v. Wade. It was the courts. You know, your vote still didn't matter that much. Probably didn't matter at all. The only time when news did something good was when it announced there was a boil order and school closures due to snow. Yeah. But you saw that at the little ticker at the bottom of the morning cartoons. Fog delay for this school district. Snow delay. You know. Hi, David. I'm preparing to test to become a teacher in California. I would suggest a different profession. I understand that it's a rather hostile environment for my brand of political and moral thought. Tips to survive. Okay. So other than consider another profession, once you get into it, you may really hate it because you will be fighting the system constantly. But if that's what you want to do, I made like $80,000 a year plus benefits as a teacher. You know, I could easily have made, if I kept doing it, I'd be making $100,000 a year, which is not bad money, right? It's pretty good money. So that's why teachers are so underpaid. I'm like, man, I could be pulling $100,000 as a teacher if I like work my cards right. But I have a lot of experience. So here's the thing. Never go in the teacher's lounge. So I'm going to give you some actual tips I'm going to actually answer your question after talking crap on the teaching profession, being a teacher. I love my fellow teachers. There's a lot of great teachers out there. You're fighting the system. So first one is never spend time in the teacher's lounge, ever. The people you meet in the teacher's lounge are going to be the most vile and toxic people you're going to meet. They are completely, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not disillusioned. They're completely cynical about everything. They hate the kids. They do their job as little as possible. Like the teacher's lounge is where all of the curmudgeon-y old, at this point, Gen Xers who are completely cynical about the system hang out. It's not you don't want to adopt those attitudes, and you don't want to make friends with people who hate the kids and hate the administration as well. You want to work with administration. You want to be at an administration's good side. You want to do what they ask you to do, and you don't want to object to what they ask you to do. Rather, if you want something, you need to always come from an angle of like, I would like to do this because I think this will produce better outcomes. You need to justify every change that you want to do. I see this a lot with band directors and drama teachers, is they want to run the program the way it was run when they were in high school, and the administration has different ideas, and it's like you just got to figure out a way to work it and get your head out of the clouds and do what's realistic. So that's the third thing, is you need to adjust your expectations to reality, not attempt to adjust reality to your expectations. If you have a certain budget, you need to work within that budget. If you have a certain set of expectations from the administration, you need to work within those expectations. If the administration wants you to do something particular, you need to do that. That's how you're going to survive and thrive as a teacher and be able to get hopefully what you want. Obviously, you should pay little heed, if any heed, to the union, because the union is actually not on your side as a teacher. A lot of people think it is, but from experience, I know the union in most conflicts will not back the teacher up. Rather, they will actually do nothing. The only time that the union does anything is for the collective bargaining agreement, because that's where they make their money. They make their money by forcing every teacher to pay them money, and that's part of the collective bargaining agreement, right? So they're there to do they're there to do the union bargaining agreement, and they're not there to help you out otherwise. So just don't expect any help from the union for anything that's going to trouble you. Most of the time, they're going to leave you out to dry. They also, in general, are not going to support things like pay raises if there's a chance that you're going to have jobs cut. They make their money by having more teachers, paying more money, right? So those are my pieces of advice. The big one is adjust your expectations to reality, not the other way around. And stay away from the teacher's lounge and from old, curmudgeon-y, cynical teachers as much as possible. And develop a close relationship with your administration where everybody's clear on what the desires and goals for outcomes are, and you're actually working to achieve those in a way that the administration will feel good about. Now, what admin really wants is documentation that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and they want to be able to point to that and say, see, Mr. So-and-so is doing what he's supposed to do. So, boom, that's the way that you're going to survive and thrive. And you can help a lot of kids that way. But you're not going to be able to help all of them, and you're probably not going to be able to help most of them. They may come from a troubled home situation, which you can't fix. And depending on what level you're teaching them, you may be dealing with multiple years of propaganda where they are going to be very difficult to give them good life advice, for instance, because they've been so heavily propagandized by the time you get them. I've had multiple students tell me, like after they graduated, you were the only teacher who told me like things I needed to know about life. It's like, yeah, And you were my music teacher. It's like, yeah, I know that you probably weren't getting that from teachers who don't live out in the world. Like how to thrive at a job, how to get a job, how to start a business. Those are things that kids need to know, but nobody gets taught. Yeah, your dad is going to be a blockchain ledger. Oh yeah, permanent. On the bright side, the sheer volume of data now, combined with degrading search technology, means that the internet really isn't forever anymore. Stuff becomes buried and effectively lost. So this is a good point. We call it dead internet theory as well. The internet just doesn't function very well anymore. Search engines don't find the things you're searching for. Social media thing doesn't show you the things you're interested in seeing. It buries the things you're interested in seeing. So yeah, this is a really good point. At a certain point, there's so much information that it becomes really difficult to find what you're looking for. And really difficult to sift through all the data to find that lost hidden picture of somebody partying from 2005 is probably going to be near impossible for most people, but not completely impossible. So I'm really thankful there's no pictures of me from 2000, or I only have a select few that I can choose to post from like 2002. There's no pictures of me like passed out drunk in the gutter or something like that. Anyway. Disconnecting has become a thing because of being overly connected with multiple grids. Yeah, I agree. I'm a family home, so no PC here. Cool. No phone policy for social events. Short term, it's devastating for social trust. Yeah. A culture of 1,000 eyes. Privacy is taboo. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, it's better to pray than to worry about politics. I'm certain any protest will cost me my job. Yes. You don't want to lose your job. You got to get tenure as a teacher. You got to make it to 2 years. To me, because I have such professional experience, I have no doubt if I got a teaching job, if I needed to go get a teaching job, I could easily get tenure. I've never lost a job as a teacher because I know how to deal with admin. I know how to have that relationship with them where like they're on my side and I'm on their side and I'm doing what they feel needs to be done so that they're satisfied with how things are working. You don't realize like how much the administration can make your life hell if you're addicted to them. This kind of hostile relationship between the two that the union fosters, it's not going to be good for your career. You could get fired after 2 years and then not get tenure. If you get tenure, it's a lot harder to fire you. Yeah, Cyberpunk is a retro setting now. Thank you, Megabuster Shepard. It's retrofuturism, much like Sword and Planet or space opera. You can still tell fun stories in it, but it has nothing to say in terms of the future because it already came true. I'm already a cyborg. You know, I'm a cyborg. You guys are cybernetically watching me using your VR chat, whatever. We have virtual reality. All this stuff's real. And we have the consequences of it. Really, Cyberpunk is like a caricature of the present, no longer a grim future, but a caricature of the present. If you have Windows 11, Discord sound abilities get messed up. I do have Windows 11, but it was working 2 weeks ago, so I don't know. Windows 11 works actually really good for me. It has a lot of good features. I built a new computer this year. I'm like, we're going with the next operating system. So I have Windows 11 on this beast. And let me tell you, the auto HDR actually works really good. Playing Morrowind, a 20-year-old game. I'd say the best gaming experience I had this year was Morrowind. A 20-year-old game that I like just used the graphics, overhaul graphics, and used Windows Auto HDR, and it's like, this game is freaking gorgeous. I can show you screenshots, but it does not do justice to the way it looks on my monitor. On an HDR OLED monitor, it's like, man, it's such a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing game. It just the auto HDR darkens everything but brightens the lights, and it's like everything looks so much more real. It's just, what a good experience. That was the best experience. And of course there's a great gameplay to back it up, but it's like, man, things just look so pleasing. Everything's so pleasing to look at. Night City's like Gotham. The city itself is an eldritch abomination where all good goes to die. Yes. Who would have guessed that hedonism leads to despair? Probably the ancients, because they knew this. Yeah, the ancients knew it too. Even back the Romans, in the pre-Christian Romans, knew that hedonism led to despair. It was something frequently discussed. Should the 14th Amendment be removed to allow rights over who is and isn't allowed in their state? So, the 14th Amendment is what really made the United States an empire and no longer a collection of states. I'll look up the exact wording. Let's see here. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So, maybe I'm thinking of a different amendment. Maybe I'm thinking of the 15th. Anyway, the 14th Amendment is a pretty important one. I'm not going to say that we should remove the 14th Amendment, and states should be allowed to control immigration into their state per se. It's really how the 14th Amendment gets kind of interpreted. I think maybe is more interesting. I don't know. That's a whole nother discussion. I haven't thought super deeply about it. See, it wasn't clear prior to the Civil War whether if you were a citizen of, Texas, that meant you were a citizen of the United States. Let me find all of these. Yes, Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So I'm a citizen of Texas, and I'm a citizen of the United States because I was born in the United States. This is an imperial. This is an imperial arrangement for the United States. I wouldn't say, I haven't thought that much about repealing that as some sort of way forward, but that would start to break down the empire, so that's never going to happen. We don't really need to think deeply about it because no one's ever going to overturn the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment will be overturned when the United States is overturned. My sister talked about having 20,000 Instagram followers at 14 a few years back. Told me society had definitely gone off a deep end. I lost the chat here. Oh, I'm sorry, Zimamara, I forgot about the book cover. I'll look at it this afternoon. I'll bring it up in a minute. I think I remember what it looked like, but I'll give you some feedback. I think the biggest issue that porn caused me is lack of interest in dating due to my lonely nature. I ended up with barely any romantic experience. Yeah, it provides an artificial sexual experience, so you don't actually learn that stuff. And it also provides artificial satisfaction, so you don't go seeking it either. It works on two sides to screw you up. It's really bad. We gotta find ways to prevent young people from having that. Let's see here. Come to the realization that the reason for the prevalence of the 80s and 90s nostalgia is that we're finally living in the future. VR is pretty cool, but it's not as cool as we thought it would be in the 90s. It's not like, oh, it's so real. It's more like, whoa, I can see things in 3 dimensions in this game. That's cool. So VR is actually pretty fun to play with, but it's not what people thought it would be. It's not really a reality simulation. It's just another way of presenting images and gameplay. Gen X knows what it means to get spanked. I know what it means too. Which generation dates Gen Y from millennials? So millennial starts in the 1990s. 1990 and on is millennial. Lived in San Francisco in 2002 and it was pretty fun. We actually liked the insanity of it and appreciated it as part of the experience. It was cool back in 2002. I don't like it now. Oh, here's one more tip for teachers. Never be alone with a student. I forgot this one. This one's really important. Never, ever, 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 ever be alone one-on-one with a student. If you have to be one-on-one with a student, you have the office door open and have other people present. If a student wants to meet with you one-on-one, completely by yourself, say, why don't we meet? Why don't we go to the counselor's office? So you go into the actual office. I'm going to the office with the student to talk to them. This sounds crazy, but you can't allow that. You can't allow any opportunity for someone to accuse you of anything. It will end your career instantly. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't matter. A single accusation will end your career. So never, ever meet alone with a student. Never give yourself the opportunity to ever say or do anything that is unprofessional with students. Never meet with them outside of school. Don't have their phone numbers. Don't have their personal email addresses if possible. Don't have any of that stuff. Your students should not be able to text you or call you on your cell phone. Your students should not be able to contact you in any kind of unprofessional way. And you should never be meeting with students outside of school. Band directors get in huge trouble with this because they're operating in a mode from the 90s when we had a high trust society and we didn't think band directors were going to be molesting kids. They were back then. They were, but people weren't aware of it. Anyway, they think, oh, well, I can just give the kids my number and they can like go drive their car and get an instrument that someone forgot. It's like, nope, can't have any of that. Sorry. That is something that you cannot not get back. You are going to get in trouble. You are going to get fired for violating fiduciary responsibility. You're going to get fired for improper behavior with students. So never meet alone with a student. Never have any kind of social relationship with a student outside of school ever. That's the other thing. That's the last thing. And you should have this attitude in business. You should never meet alone with a woman, guys. You should never do it. If a woman's going to meet in your office, you open the blinds so everybody can see in. Sorry, that's the world we live in. A woman can instantly destroy a man's reputation and career with a single accusation. So you need to make it so that that's either impossible or it would be so obviously false that it would not affect you. I've known too many people that have had basically lost their careers because they didn't know where to draw the line and they were letting students, say, text them about their problems or something. No, the students are not your friends. You're not their counselor. They shouldn't be texting you. If a student comes to you with a personal problem, say like, why don't we go meet with the school psychologist and she will help you, right? You have to have professional distance. You can give them, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but the psychologist is a professional. He will know exactly how to help you better. And yeah, you're pushing that off on the psychologist, but the psychologist is a professional and will know how to deal with all those things in a way that no one will get in trouble and will probably help the student better than you can. Sad thing about Cyberpunk is we don't get to meet Morgan Blackhand, the man who's like the Jedi to the Adam Smasher of Sith. Oh, that's true. We only really meet Adam Smasher in the last, moments of the game. No, we meet him in a flashback. We meet him in the brain dance first, and he's like really spooky looking. In Evelyn's brain dance, that's when we meet Adam Smasher. I feel like we need more of him. The only objectively correct choice is to punch the journal, and they don't let you do that. Mass Effect at least lets you punch journalists, and then they got all upset that like 90% of people were choosing to punch the journalists in Mass Effect. I always choose to kill the Arachnite Queen in Mass Effect. All Xenos must die. I play Mass Effect as a Warhammer 40k Space Marine. Glory to the Emperor. I refused to help him get to the studio and ended up killing him at the start of the quest, if I recall correctly. I wanted to see where it played out because people were like, you got to do this Sinnerman quest. And I was like, this is really bad already. We're just letting this guy lay dead in the street, and then this guy's going to crucify himself. Who do I get to kill to stop this? I thought maybe I could convince people that they shouldn't do that with words, but there's no option to do that. And then I didn't have the option to use force, which would have been to like beat everybody up or kill them. It reminds me, I had like I think it was an ocular upgrade that made all attacks non-lethal. So I could go through the game without killing anybody. Everybody would just lie on the ground like oh, even if I shot him in the head, they would just headshots don't do like extra damage. So like you could do a total 0 kill playthrough. Not a 0 kill, but you could do a near 0 kill playthrough of Cyberpunk if you get that little ocular upgrade, so you can you can smash things. You could just, everybody will just lay on the ground moaning. Beg of you, do not write me Merry Christmas, Merry Xmas. Roe v. Wade also wasn't a vote that put it into place. Very good. The court put Roe v. Wade into place. The court took it out. Your vote did nothing. There was 50 years that Republicans could have created a constitutional amendment to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they didn't bother to do that. So it tells you just exactly how much they care about babies. The Republicans don't. They only care about being in power, just like the Democrats. They really do not care about the issues that their constituents care about. And they really don't care about their constituents, which is why they lose. It's why they do so bad in this midterm, is because they're completely disconnected from what people want them to do. Can society actually function with this level of constant distrust? Not really. Communities can function, but society not as much. We're always going to have to rely on third parties to verify everything. The third party will manage the payments. Nobody wants to carry cash anymore because you'll get robbed. So the third party manages the payments. The corporation does. We need the police to manage our interactions with each other. But your individual in like your own community, your church, your neighborhood, your online community, yes, you totally can have high trust communities. But a high trust society is on the way out. Sorry. We got too many differences and too many people trying to hurt each other. Oh, birthright citizenship is also spawned from a reading of the 14th Amendment from the 60s, yeah. Due process granted by the 14th Amendment is good for jurisdictional reasons. Yeah, I haven't thought that much about it, like repealing the 14th. I'm like, yeah, I don't think it would happen. Like, repealing this kind of stuff it's like, why don't we repeal the 19th Amendment? That's the one that gave women the right to vote, right? Let me look. I don't want to talk out my butt here. Yes, okay. Why don't we repeal the 19th Amendment? Good luck. You're going to have to get women to vote to take away the vote. Men voted to give women the vote. How crazy is that? Why would you do that? Oh, it's because you were convinced by their arguments. In the UK, the Conservatives won the election on reduced immigration platform, and the result was record immigration during lockdowns with 1 million immigrants last year. Yeah, they don't care, guys. They'll say one thing and they'll do another. They're going to do whatever that's going to give them the most money and most pleasure in the moment, give them the most power for the longest time. There's a complete disconnect, and the reality is your vote doesn't really matter, guys. It might matter, like I voted really to vote down school bonds locally because I don't want to pay for schools I don't use. Yeah, your vote will probably count for something like that. That's pretty local and will actually affect things. But yeah, let's say you elect, I think Dan Crenshaw's my congressman. I hate that guy. I don't hate him. I dislike him. I dislike his policies, and he doesn't represent me at all. I don't know if he represents anyone. But if I vote for the Democrat, does she represent me? No, there's no representative. There's no one to represent me. No one to represent me. So why should I worry about it? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to pray instead. I'm going to pray instead. All right. It's getting on. It's getting a little late here. I can't get Discord to work for some reason, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'll have people on next week to talk more about this stuff. Eyes on the Walls is free, so grab that. Eyes on the Walls. Let me find it. Boom. Actually, let me do this little thing. Boom. Here it is. Eyes on the Walls. It's free. It's free today, so you should read it. Let's see here. There's 56 people who rate it pretty highly, and then there's 43 people on Goodreads who also think it's good. So you should. It's free now. The ebook is free. Go ahead and grab it and read it. This is also a Gen Y book. And then, of course, Afterglow Generation Y. Wow! Just came out. So we'll grab that one. People really like the ending of Eyes on the Walls. People really like the ending of Eyes on the Walls. So, yes, Afterglow Generation Y. I guess you can't see me here for some reason. up. I can't see my camera here. Oh, whatever. Anyway, that's what the sales page looks like for Afterglow Generation Y. And then, of course, get J.D. Cowan's book, Generation Y, the New Lost Generation, which will explain a lot of things that we've been talking about for years at this point. It has more of the essays. And then if you want to know, if you want like a little fantasy story for the characters from Middlebury, there's that one right there. So yeah, grab Eyes in the Walls, grab Afterglow, and I think I'm going to end it here and get to work on some other stuff. I really appreciate everybody coming and talking. This has been like one of the most fun shows I've done, even though I'm sure Jacob had a lot of stuff. I'll have him on maybe next week. I'll figure out another chat option, because I know he wants to get out there and get people interested in what he's doing. He's a young guy. I want to help young people as well as old people, right? Not just Gen Y guys that need help, right? If you can get like a foot in the ground, foot in the business as a young person, it helps a lot. I didn't get into this writing thing until my 30s. There's never too late, by the way. It's never too late to start, because you can do anything, right? But it's really helpful if you're young and you can make all of your mistakes really quickly and then learn from them and then do really good things right away. You know, it really helps people out. I think I have some friends that are releasing books next week too, so I'll try to maybe get them on for the show as well. I like StreamYard a lot, but I get more control with OBS, and I thought I'd have more control with this, but for whatever reason, I can't get the audio from Discord today. Just today. Worked 2 weeks ago, you know, it's not working today for some reason, and I'm really sorry for that, and I'm sorry to Jacob for messing that up. And I think Alexander was going to stop by, but it's not going to work today, so that's okay. We won't worry too much about it today. We'll keep it simple. Those are the books. I don't know if there's anything else to promo here. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great one. Don't forget to grab the books and support other indie authors too. Let me know what good stuff you're reading, and I'll try to get them on the show. I've had a couple people suggest, hey, you should get this person or that person on the show. I really appreciate those. I don't always reach out to the person or right away, depending on what I'm doing, because I kind of do this week to week. I'm not sure what I'm going to do any given week because I've got a lot going on. You know, I got kids and stuff, and sometimes we need to travel, maybe go to Dallas or something. So anyway, there's these. The other newest book, I don't have a copy because my wife's reading it. My wife stole my copy to read. Al Shafalda. That came out in October. So I do 2 books in 2 months. I'll see if I can do something for December. Probably not. And if I do something, I may do a secret book. I may do a book that's actually not meant for you guys to read. That's like under a pen name. A secret book. And of course, please do leave a rating if you've watched the videos on the channel or you've read the book. Please do leave an Amazon review. It really, really helps me out. And that's the truth for any indie author. If you like their book, please review it so that other people can know what to expect from it. And even if you thought it was middling or you want to give it 3 stars or even 1 star, 1-star reviews are usually people who are vindictive, but most people who read an entire book are not going to give it less than like 2 or 3 stars. But you can leave that and say, like, here's what I thought was good about it. You know, this is the audience I recommend it for. And I do this with books too. Like, I like Twilight. It's like, I like it as in the sense that it's not for me. It's for like 12-year-old girls, but it's very good for them. So if I do like a review of Twilight, it's from the perspective of, hey, if you're part of this audience and you like these things, then you'll probably like Twilight. And I can do that with a lot of books. So that's really a helpful attitude, and it really helps a lot of indie artists to leave a review. The review is like the most valuable thing that you can do for them. More than giving them a sale, giving them a review will help them out tremendously. So that's it. Thanks, guys. I'll see you all next time, and have a great day. Oh, last thing. I didn't have confidence in my writing in traditional publishing. Still had a stranglehold on books. I have much more confidence now. Good. Develop that confidence. Explore. Have fun. We'll see you next time.